Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Grey Matter Hounds podcast, the science salon where predictive minds explore the world of hounds and behavior. Today, we're stepping into the fascinating world of tracking, also called man-trailing, how it intertwines with predictive minds and allostasis. But this isn't just an episode about dogs finding people. It's about prediction, about uncertainty, about nervous systems efficiently regulating themselves and each other through action, movement, exterior sensory measuring by olfaction, vision, audition, even touch and taste, terrain exploration through proprioceptive signal exchanges, interoceptive states, and the relationship between the handler and the dog. Because when a tracking dog drops its nose to the ground or raises its nose into the air interchangeably and begins moving in space, something really extraordinary is happening. The dog is not merely reacting to scent and its sensorium. The dog is expecting, modeling where it has to point its senses next, building and updating a living model of reality continuously. So, active sensing. And so are we, the owner handler behind the long line. In 2020, we organized a seminar which included how to lay a trail with a person or an object hiding to then be tracked and found by the dog, and it featured on a little farm. She is the author of A Dog's Fabulous Sense of Smell, and she also did DVDs together with Tori Drugas. One of them is nose work and tracking. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic. She could only attend virtually. Her approach to tracking is deeply observational, so less command and control and more observing and listening based. In her framework, the dog is not a machine executing obedience. The dog is an active specialist, an inferring and meaning-making organism interacting its expectations dynamically with terrain, wind, moisture, contamination, affective arousal, and its human expectations behind the lead. The handler's role becomes less director, but more a regulator, sharer, and observer. That distinction matters enormously because contemporary neuroscience provides so much experiential evidence suggesting at least brains, whether canine, human, or vertebrate, are fundamentally predictive systems. Predictive processing proposes something radically different to the commonly embraced stimuli-response paradigm. Brains do not passively receive the world. Brains actively generate predictions about the world, then update those predictions through sensory feedback. Learning is a matching process. Metaphorically, the organism continuously asks, in the past, when I was in a similar situational instance in relation to these outcomes, what actions were efficient, and what are the next sensory inputs to expect, and what importance do they have in relation to my physical state. In tracking, the dog is constantly solving those questions on a continuous time frame moving through space. A tiny chemical particle appears floating by. The dog predicts wind direction, where to point sensors. Human move this way. I change direction or hold true. Then the terrain changes, the wind shifts, the scent weakens. Prediction errors arise, meaning actions and movements change. The dog's systems begin sampling the environment differently. Wider casts, slower or increased breathing rates, changes in gaits, head lifts, terrain checks, etc. You can observe this in the videos playing along to this podcast. The trail becomes a conversation between expectations and surprise. The surprise being either the discriminated scent, fading, or increasing in volume particle matter. By inferring using past experience, organisms reduce uncertainty by updating or matching beliefs or acting on the environment itself. That is a long-winded way of saying systems ensure efficiency. The more inefficient actions become on a physical state, the higher the uncertainty or surprise. Both reward and punishment in any uncertain state are physically taxing, so costly, they're aversive. unless the system is expecting surprise in a safe state, which we are trying to provide when we lay a track and when the dog finds a person hiding. Safe states are when the system has surplus energy to dispose, and in a real life example, that would be if an individual is safe from any form of discomfort, pain, or death. Laying tracks, interacting positively, moving slowly, calmly, and trusting the dog, observing well, taking into account environmental changes, and the wider acknowledging the dog when he found the hider provides that form of safety for the dog. A tracking dog is not following one continuous line of order like a railway track. Instead, the dog constructs a probabilistic model. Tiny fragments of chemicals become clues about an unseen world when chemicals pass through the olfactory system, transduce to chemical electrical signals, and interact with the brain's intrinsic chemical electrical outputs. The dog infers accuracy of direction, speed, freshness, affective state relational to its interoception, terrain transitions, and behavioral interactions with the handler behind the long line. The dog carries what scientists call a generative model of what the environment should smell like. And it is through the displacement of chemicals in the environment, actively sensed by the dog's sensorium, that surprise gets the brain to actively change its own outputs, so matching changing contexts in continuously changing instances, all in relation to the environment the dogs move in. Every respiration cycle has opportunities to update that model, every action to move senses, direction, and test it. Every contamination event challenges precision. And this is where Annalel Quam's philosophy becomes remarkably aligned with predictive processing paradigms. Because she repeatedly emphasizes trust in the dog's action perception cycles, allow problem solving, minimize handler interference, and letting the dog work through uncertainty. From a predictive processing perspective, that is exactly how adaptive intelligence develops, not through rigid correction, but through precision calibration. In predictive processing, the precision refers to how much confidence the brain gives to incoming signals versus prior expectations. Too much confidence in priors, the dog ignores evidence. Too much confidence in noisy sensory input, the dog becomes chaotic and fragmented. Great tracking dogs appear to balance both beautifully. They remain confident enough to commit, but flexible enough to revise. And handlers can either support or protrude this process. Imagine a handler is constantly pressuring the dog. No, not there, this way. Or pulling in the direction the handler thinks the dog should be going. The handler may accidentally interfere and override the dog's sensory inference with social pressure. The dog stops investigating the track and starts predicting the handler more. Annalel's style often preserves the dog's inferential autonomy. That autonomy matters because adaptive organisms need room to resolve uncertainty themselves. Now that brings us to energy needs and regulation. So, allostasis. Allostasis means stability through change, unlike homeostasis, which is reactive after disruption. Allostasis is predictive regulation. The brain constantly anticipates future energetic needs and adjusts the body in advance. Tracking is profoundly allostatic. Why? Because the dog's brain is continuously preparing the body for the next physical needs. Chemical changes needed in arousal, heart rate changes, breathing, movement efficiency, muscular effort, attentional focus, thermal load, affective uncertainty and social coordination, all influencing, thus sharing the cost of the handler's allostasis and vice versa with the dog. Tracking is enacting that dynamic loop between body and environment. A good trail pulls the dog into a highly adaptive physiological rhythm as well as that of the handlers behind the long line. No hyperarousal, no shutdown. but engagement and enactment. This may explain why many anxious or reactive dogs often seem to become calmer, more coherent, and behaviorally organized through scent work. The nervous system gains predictive traction. The world gains certainty and becomes more understandable with less costly surprises that influence the physical states negatively. Recent active inference research describes something called the enactive niche. The idea is simple. Organisms do not merely exist inside environments. They actively shape the environments that shape them. So space is not something things are placed in. Space, or what we call our environment, is the things themselves. Think about the tracking field. The handler selects the terrain, weather matters, pace matters, difficulty matters, safety matters, effect on interoceptive changes, so mood matters. The entire exercise becomes a carefully sculpted informational ecology relational to all things that make up space. Quam's method often appear designed around exactly this principle. Create conditions where the dog can remain curious enough to solve uncertainty without tipping into too much sensory noise. This is extraordinarily sophisticated nervous system work. As mentioned a few times now, there are other nervous systems in on the track and behind the long line. That are humans. Handlers often enter trails carrying tension. So maybe performance anxiety, caring if they do it right, if they can visualize the markers properly. Maybe they feel the urgency to find a person hiding. The frustrations if it looks as though the dog is off the track or has now totally different expectations, such as that bunny hole it anticipates to be there somewhere nearby under a bush. Dogs detect this instantly, probably by our scent or how predictably we move, especially if the dog knows the handler well. The leash becomes an information channel. That may sound a wee bit like mumbo jumbo, but the way we put pressure on the lead are transferable signals through touch on the dog's coat and skin. Not to mention the visual signals of micro movements we express with our bodies, including our faces. In active inference terms, the dog is not only modeling the trail, the dog is modeling the handler, and the handler is modeling the dog. This creates coupled nervous systems. A calm handler is increasing that state of safety, therefore broadens exploratory behavior and lessens allostatic load. A panic handler narrows it. And fascinatingly, experienced tracking handlers often become quieter over time. They're less verbal, less controlling, and more observant, almost meditative. Because for successful trailing requires tolerating some uncertainty and some surprise. But the load, the cost is shared, thus energy regulation is efficient. That may be one of the deepest lessons tracking teaches humans. Under Carl Friston's free energy principle, organisms survive by minimizing uncertainty over time. But they do not minimize uncertainty by hiding from the world. They minimize it by skillfully engaging with the world. Tracking embodies this perfectly. The dog moves towards ambiguity, so seeks surprises to reduce uncertainty over time. It does so by getting into scent pools, across hard surfaces, through contamination, towards incomplete information. And through action, sampling, and revision, the world becomes intelligible again. That is not obedience, that's embodied cognition. Maybe tracking has always been more than detection work. Maybe it is one of the clearest windows into how our dogs' minds may function. Prediction, regulation, error, matching, revision, learning, memorizing, interactive movement, deeper relationships between hound and human. A tracking dog is not simply following scent. The dog is continuously negotiating and constructing its reality itself. And perhaps that is why watching a good trailing dog feels almost philosophical. Because for a moment you are watching incredible intelligence in real time. Not abstract intelligence, living intelligence, nose to ground or in the air, visible respiration changing, body in motion. You've been listening to Grey Matter Hounds podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other curious minds exploring dogs, behavior, and predictive organisms. Until next time, stay curious, trust your dogs, and remember, every track is a conversation between prediction and surprise. Ciao!